Look, it wasn't a great weekend for Liverpool, Chelsea, or Tottenham fans, but think of it this way. At least you're not Drake. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the Black Man Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, I think, as the kids say, he took the biggest L of them all, and I have to admit, I am not across that beef the way many people are, but the people who are have reliably informed me that it hasn't gone well for him. So, that's fine. It didn't go well for Patrick Mahomes in the superb Owl last night, as it wasn't much of a game, and the Eagles won, and Philadelphia, a city that welcomed Arsenal with open arms this summer, now welcomes a title. And I would say, is that a coincidence? Probably. So we're going to answer your questions, lots of transfer questions, which is weird. It's almost like people really like talking about transfers. Lots of questions about whether we can win the 2 remaining competitions we're in, prioritizing competitions, this, that, and even the other thing. That's right. All of those things. We'll have a very fun patron pod for you tomorrow, but it is a closely guarded secret what it's going to be. It is a pretty exciting new concept coming tomorrow only on Patreon. And the only way to find out about it is after I decide what it's going to be. So please join us over there. If you use code AVP, it's $2.50. I mean, how are you going to get better value than that unless you buy literally anything else? But we would love to have you over there because we love you. And we just enjoy sharing time with you. And I enjoy sharing time with Paul. Hello, Paul.
Yep. Woohoo!
Who indeed caught him unawares. And of course, I enjoy sharing time with Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And I enjoy sharing time with Tim, and Tim will be on later on down the week. In fact, he's going to host the Thursday pod. So if you like a main pod, and you especially like a main pod when I'm not on it, well, boy, oh boy, do we have the pod for you. But it's not today. But we are going to answer your questions today. It's been an interesting morning for me already. I will say last night I did watch the Super Bowl because, it's part of the citizenship requirement here. And also, part of the citizenship requirement is to eat snacks that aren't good for you and then go to bed and feel like crap while your stomach grumbles and growls all night. So I did that. Woke up this morning, opened the blinds, and the first thing I see is 2 very large coyotes walking across my front yard. So that was a bit ominous, almost as if it was a portent of things to come in my sporting life or fandom. But we'll see if that's the case. Clive? Any coyotes, wild animals, or other excitement in your life wandering through the world of your life?
No, not really. Nothing like that. No,
nothing like that.
I've lived in England. They don't really have anything, do they?
They've got foxes.
Well, it's fascinating because didn't they have a show at one stage, Clive, where you'd be like, they had cameras and at night, and you'd see like animals wandering around, and it'd be like, as you say, a fox or like a lost badger or something. Whereas over here, like even in Chicago, we've got like elk, moose, wildebeest, yaks, cobras, roaming. It's like America's got everything.
Just so we're clear, Clive, he's lying about almost all of that. None of those things are in Chicago.
I mean, I was glazing. Yeah. I think
charming.
We get
absolutely charming.
We get the odd foxes in North London. We get a lot of them in the streets at night, but
vicious foxes.
Yeah, as I understand, the foxes like to do adult fox stuff together at night quite loudly. Is that true?
Don't ask me, mate. I'm pretty one-dimensional, Elliot. I'm focusing on my football. What's wrong with you? I look out the window.
Not English.
I think they call
foxes,
it rutting. Is that what it's called? Rutting? I don't know.
I don't know.
I just know that apparently it makes quite the racket when they do it. Which kudos to them. Sounds
great.
Like
fox porn. Thank you, Elliot.
If it isn't out there already, I'd be shocked. Okay, don't Google that website.com. Okay, let's get to the football because I can see Clive squirming. And we are not here to make Clive squirm. I mean, we are, but with football questions predominantly. And so I think this is a good starting point because it happened over the weekend. Oli. See, people love that I can't say that name. I guess it's
Oli Watkins.
But it's Oliver, so it's Oli.
Yeah, of course
right?
it's Oli.
It's just Oli.
Okay.
Oli Watkins.
Oli.
Yeah.
Oli, but Oli Watkins didn't ask the question. Oli asked the question on social media. Does the Liverpool game against Plymouth give you encouragement for the rest of the season? It's the first time we've seen them without Salah, Van Dijk, and they looked less impressive. Now, Ali, I would say Clive is being a little generous to us because they were without a hell of a lot more than just Salah or Van Dijk. But is it any encouragement to you that if they were to suffer their own injury crisis, that maybe this is not some unbeatable Liverpool team, or is this 2 + 2 = 22?
As Ange told us, if you lose 7 or 8 of your players, then guess what happens? You're going to lose games. And he's got about 11 out, and he quoted Liverpool and said, look what happened to Liverpool today. They made 8 changes, I believe, for the game. And they look like it. They had a lot of youngsters in some key spinal positions. I think they had Endo playing centre back with Quanta, so they rested their centre backs. They rested their fullbacks. And they rested their goalkeeper. They know what's coming up, mate. They've got, I believe, 5 Premier League games in 15 days. So we had like 5 home games in like 15, 16 days, but it was in 4 competitions in January. I mean, 11 games in 36 days. They know this is the moment for their season. And so, according to me now, this doesn't suit everybody, I know, I would have done exactly the same because I know what's coming up. If they can get those 5 games boxed off properly and come out the other side, they're in a great position because they know that they've got room to slip a little bit, but not too much. And they can really crush us emotionally if they do win the Goodison Derby on Wednesday, Liverpool Derby on Wednesday. And so, yeah, I do exactly the same. They know that this is their moment. This is it, mate, for them. They know it, and they're really focused on it. So I actually see it as not as encouragement, but it tells me they're really super focused. Doesn't mean they're going to get the results. So I'm finding it not encouraging at all. I wish they would play a few of their players, pick up a few hamstrings. They're not being encouraged. But right now, all their players are resting. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Paul?
Mm-hmm. Look, you take out a few players, your level's going to drop. It's amazing we have not seen Salah really out of the lineup when they needed him. It's kind of all we're really asking for. A little fairness out there. Let Liverpool have to play a few key games without Mo Salah. That seems to be the one injury. We haven't really seen them without Van Dijk. I mean, those are the two, right? For us, we probably would have said, if you protect Saka, Odegaard, and Saliba, I would say. Be interesting to find out what would happen without David Raya, but we don't really think about goalkeepers, and they just had their 2 guys all season, every game. It's not fair. Yes, they would drop some points without those guys, and we would just have needed them to drop some points to make this very, very interesting.
Yeah, and Clive, one of the things that I just wanted to touch on here as we're talking about the FA Cup and exits for teams like Chelsea and Liverpool and Tottenham, I think managers are in impossible situations in a way, because I am seeing a lot of criticism from Mikel around our injuries that sort of suggest, oh, well, it's not luck. It's something about Mikel's playing style and the way we train and the way we play that leads to these injuries, which, I mean, obviously it didn't lead to Declan Rice's broken toe or Odegaard's snapped ankle in a Norway game or anything. So I don't know that I put a lot of credence in that, but setting aside whether I put any credence in that or not, you see arguments like that. But then you also see arguments like, oh, why do we chuck the cups? Why are we so bad in domestic cups? And like, all right, fair enough. Since winning it in 2020, we have not made the progress in the domestic cups we'd like. And those are things we enjoy winning. But is it increasingly difficult for managers because Slot took a risk with leaving his best players not only out of the team, but out of the squad entirely? A risk that I think you could say is justified based on what is legitimately within their grasp now, a final in the League Cup, a good-looking run in the Champions League, and a nice cushion in the Premier League. He took that risk. He got bit, and they're out of the FA Cup to Plymouth at the bottom of the championship. No one's going to be happy with that exit. He gets an easier road, to be fair, of justifying that decision because he's in a very good position to potentially bring home a trophy. But were he to not bring home a trophy, people are going to point back to this Plymouth game and be like, what the heck were you doing? So how do managers thread that needle, the needle of justifiably being told, you better rotate? And then if you have injuries, why didn't you rotate? But if you get knocked out of the cups, why didn't you go for the cups? How do you win? How do you balance that?
Yeah, this time last year, Liverpool got to League Cup final. They had a lot of injuries, remember? They ended up with a lot of kids on the bench.
Yep.
They came on and beat Chelsea. So funny. But they stayed in the FA Cup. They were going for a quadruple, remember? And they stayed in the FA Cup. They were in the Champions League, I think, and basically, I was at Europa League, I can't remember, but they had opportunity of 4 trophies. And they took on too much and ended up with just the League Cup. Now, I'm not going to criticize them for taking a choice, right? They've got to do that. For me, they've got to do it because there's too much football otherwise, too much high-pressured football that people just expect you to just get through and deal with. And this is their opportunity to make a change, and they did it. It's their only opportunity. So I think they're right to do it. In fact, their most compressed space of games coming up. For Arteta, I think slightly differently, Elliot. You can say that we're not in the cups, but you've got to say that we've increased our points total over the last 4 years each year, right? So in our second year in the Champions League, I think we were a little bit naive, and not naive. I think it caught us out last year, the Bayern Villa week, and basically we now understand that a little bit more as a group. I think for me, the stuff around the cups, we've had some tough draws, bit unfortunate timing, etc. I think Arsenal have got one major weakness for me is that's managing emotional capacity and physical capacity on number of games in short spaces of time. Emotional capacity, I can see it when we drain that emotional well. I can see what's coming next, and the same physically as well. The two are probably interlinked. That's always been our weakness. So how do we get around that? It's always been having a bigger squad. We haven't done that this year. If you want to critique Arteta, I don't critique him on the cuts per se because it is what it is. I think projecting the schedule going forward this year being as tough as it was, I think that's caught us out. I do. It's definitely caught us out. 11 games in 36 days would always test anybody, right? So, but it's definitely caught us out, and we've just got through it. Barely. We come out the other end now. We've got very few games before April in comparison, but we got very few players because of that compressed period, and that's the worry. And so what we do now going forward, I think, is key. But I would critique the club on not having enough squad depth to manage the strength of schedule and the increase of Champions League games, and projecting that we may go further in the League Cup. You had to be ready for that, and we chose to risk another way, and that's our failure for me.
Yeah, and this is the part where I think I do understand the get a body in. Like, look, I was not someone who believed that like a Matisse Tell, for example, was worth a dry loan. I think that Matisse Tell is at a point in his career where right now he would be behind not only Waneri for us and Kai for us and Leo for us, but potentially Sterling as well. But 4 isn't enough. And candidly, I think what happens with injuries is as you get injuries, you start overtaxing the players you have left, which leads those players to pick up injuries, right? So that's just how that goes. Paul, and then I've got a question for you on the league.
Sure. Well, I think the interesting point that comes to mind is that Mikel himself, before this window, I think before he realized how short he was going to be, was talking about how short the squads are. It wasn't just his squad, he was talking about squads, I think, in general, that the way football's going and the challenges he was having before we kind of hit this even stickier patch. He just thinks squads are too small, and that his squad needs to be bigger. Everybody's squad needs to be bigger, and I think that talks to the emotional, the mental energy side of this, and the physical energy. This is the year when the chickens came home to roost for us. I think other teams have been maybe a little luckier, but it's going to come home to roost for pretty much every team. And we have to judge it based on the outcomes, the things that have happened to us. But we are actually being a bit unlucky at the moment. But our shortcomings then come to the fore, and I think some of the questions will be around those. It's like, well, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? The hardest window to execute is January, but by Mikel's own profession, and by what I think Gunnar Blog did a very nice piece for The Athletic, where he kind of mapped out the conversations internally with the board, the execs, the team, with Arteta. And while I'm not saying there was any discord, it was clear that Arteta was pushing for things in the January window that the club was not ready or able to deliver at that point, or maybe willing to. So I think Arteta would certainly have things to say here if he was on the pod, in terms of we're left a little short in the January window in general.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to a question about the league, guys. Well, Clive, I'll give it to you then. Cam in the Coast asks, if Liverpool drop points to Everton, how does that change your view on the title race?
Mate, I'm a naive soul. I still think we're in it until as long as it stays at this level. I think for me this season's really been a frustrating one. I think for any, I think Liverpool have been better than us. I really do. They've been better than us. They look more. They've been able to be more consistent in their team selection. And I look at the screen and I look at them. And I think, yeah, you're quite good. You are. I don't think they're infallible. I think the schedule has helped them build confidence. And once they built their confidence, I think they've been really quite good, right? So, but I don't think they're 9 points better than us. That's the frustration. For all the things that really bothered me is I know I don't go over it, and I sound like I'm moaning Arsenal fans, but just take away those 2 kick the ball away red cards. Just take them away. That's all, and we get another 4 points. That's the gap. That's what it should be. That's the gap. If we're dumb enough to get a Saliba sent off and etc., then at least that's a football thing. You can decide whether it's fair or not. It's a football thing. You can decide whether the penalty at Brighton is fair. You know what? I don't mind. We've been doing that for years going forward. But I've just not seen people get sent off for kicking the ball away 2 yards away in the multi-ball system. Just not seen it. And that was important. And so, yeah, I think they're better than us, but I think they're 5 points better than us, if you see what I mean. Not 9 points better than us. And if they do drop those points, I think it'll be interesting because they know we have shown the ability to go on a long run. So we didn't have that credit in the bank. No, we'd never done 16 out of 18. We've just never done it, for a long, long time. So they know we have the experience to manage consecutive wins in a row. The issue is we've got everybody with their legs up with hamstrings and things like that. That's the problem. It comes back to where we started from around our recruitment and recruitment for this schedule. But I was just saying to you earlier on, Spurs have got a lot of injuries, and Chelsea got a lot of injuries. They've got a massive squad. Even they've got problems. They have to bring people back from loan, like Saliba, for example, to cover their defensive areas. Could we have reacted with Vieira? That's something that's been in the back of my mind. If you don't want to commit to long-term spending, I understand it. What about the assets you already own? Could we have done something there to bring a body back to who we know, who is one of us? I think that's the sort of thing you can question. I watched Rashford and Mateus Tel running around yesterday. When you're searching for forwards, they look really good all of a sudden. Do you know what I mean? So you start to question that. So yeah, that's the bit that concerns me. I know we're still in it, but have we the firepower to stay in it? If that makes sense. I'm not so sure.
I looked at the table and sort of trying to roll this around in my mind, and realistically, we need Liverpool to lose 3 of their next 15 games, having lost 1 of their first 23. Now, one of those could be Arsenal at Anfield. At least that would be in our hands. So then you need them to lose 2 of 14. And then you probably need them to drop 1 more point somewhere, unless you think we'll overhaul, the goal difference, which we could. It's 8, so it's not impossible. But again, as you start to do it, it gets difficult, I think, to come up with how you get there. So, Paul, there's been a couple good questions about this, and I'll pick this one out because I think it's just the easiest way to ask it. This is I Am All Right on Discord. When would you want Arteta to prioritize one competition over the other? Like, what would be the scenario where you'd say, fuck it, let's go all in for the UCL or vice versa? And I'll actually give you what Robin asked as a setup because I think it makes sense. Our round of 16 Champions League game comes as follows. Forest at home, first leg. United away, second leg. Chelsea at home. So that second leg is going to be between United and Chelsea. First leg between Forest and United, all of which tough games. Quarterfinal, should we make it there, would be probably Everton away, quarterfinal. Brentford at home, quarterfinal. Ipswich away. Actually, probably a little easier in that respect than the round of 16. I guess my point is, Paul, what would it take for you to say, like, I'm okay rotating for Forest at home and dropping points if that's what happens to be ready for the Champions League? Is there a certain gap? Is there a scenario or no scenario? What would it take?
I think that's an intellectual pursuit that may not have much of a grounding in reality, because what's rotating look like at the moment? We only have like two forwards for like three and a bit positions. Our midfield, I mean, we got a few options. We can rotate those. We probably won't need to because we have a few options. So they'll be maybe the freshest part of the team. And defenders play every game, right? We have a couple of options for right wing when Ben White's fit, which gives us a couple of options for left wing because Timber can play either side. And so far, Saliba, Gabriel, I mean, if they're fit, they play, so they don't get rotated. So I think it's an emotional thought for the fans that the one area of the pitch we'd need rotations is the attacking end. Now, in principle, you prioritize the Champions League starting from now because we're in it, and we're as in it as we'll ever be. Maybe we will get more experience next year. We will get stronger, but like sometimes it's just your year. So if it breaks for you, you go for it. And we've as good a shot. It's a very even competition, whereas the Premier League, but there's not a lot to choose from, right? It's like, what are you going to do if you're the manager? You're going to play your strongest team for sure in the Champions League, because that's when you put yourself on show in front of the world. Each of those games is one of those games where the world is watching, where that's why your players play for Arsenal and aren't trying to get for another. Like, you can't cheat the players. Like, you can have reasons to rotate and change and based on the choices between this game and the next game, but you can't cheat the players in terms of the Champions League. You have to put out the strongest team. You might be up against Bayern in the next round, or like you can't put out a slightly weakened team against Bayern to shade it because you got Forest, you got Chelsea. Like, you got to put out the strongest team for the Champions League, and it's probably going to look a lot like the team you play before it and after it in the league. There isn't a lot of choices here, but if they were, you'd lean towards the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely lean towards the Champions League. I agree with that, Paul. And I just as proof that I read out the questions just as they're written, it's Forest away, actually, so it's an even harder game, not Forest at home. Yeah, I think this is a tough one because until the league is mathematically won by Liverpool, we're in it. And the fact that we go to Anfield is going to make it feel like we should keep hope alive. I don't know if you've looked at Liverpool's fixtures, but they have a very tough cluster of fixtures during the run-in. So if you keep the pressure on, and I know nobody likes that phrase because of some of the jokes that go along with it, but if you keep the pressure on, you can be in a situation where the funniest timeline, a complete collapse at the very end, is possible, especially if they are deep in the Champions League and maybe they suffer the injuries. And so much of this is also bound up together. Can Saka make it back? How long is Martinelli out? We are going to have to make things work for a while. And Clive, this is a question that a lot of people asked in a lot of different ways. So I'll give it to SD Gunnar Cap on Discord, who says, which surprise player can you see filling in the forward line for the next month or so? I mean, it is the case that Kai, Leo, Sterling, and Ethan are the only recognized available forwards we have right now. Could there be a surprise player that comes off the bench to play as a forward for 15, 20, 30 minutes in a game in the next month or so?
Yeah, I'm not so about forward per se. If we're looking for a late goal, you can see a situation where Gabriel goes centre forward for a while and we go to, just to take a defender out. I can see that depending on the game state. If you think about it systemically and what we've done this year, when we lost Odegaard, what did we do? We sort of went to the 2x2 system. We went almost like 4-4-2 for a while with Trossard and Havertz playing that central area with a double pivot, and we had two wide men, right? I can see a situation where those wide men change to fullbacks, and we have double fullbacks on both sides, right? And
you're thinking like a Kieran Tierney on the left, for example?
A Kieran Tierney on the left, a Timber on the right, or a Miles on the left, higher up, with a left back behind him, And so you're using the players you have fit. So you have a set of resources, and we have a number of defenders, with Ben White coming back shortly, a number of fullbacks who are going to be fit, right? So who can play, higher and lower. And so you have to use them, wouldn't you? You have to have a situation like a Zinchenko could play off on the left-hand side, for example. You have to use your resources. And that's the way I'd go. And I'd do that 2-by-2 system again, because now your 4 strikers, you're playing 2 of them. Do you see what I mean? At every one time. When I say 4, you've got Trossard, Havertz, Ethan, and Sterling. If you can, towards the end of a game, only have 2 of those on, but you've got a system that can hold a game, I think it'd be interesting. So you can see our normal system being played with Ethan getting more game time. But then as the game state changes, I can see us going to that system more, using the resources that we have. And that's what I would do. When you're at the game in it, and I sit near the side of the bench, you see the players warming up in that North Bank corner, and I see like 3 left backs and a centre back coming down. You think to yourself, okay, we got to use those. And they're all desperate to play. They're all bouncing up and down, desperate to play. Marino, desperate to play. I'm thinking, well, we got to use them. Everyone's thinking, oh, we have 3 forwards, but we've only got 4 now. Only got 1 person to come on. We have to reduce that number, and that's what, by changing the system. That's my opinion anyway.
Paul?
I tell you what astounds me is that we have Miles Lewis Skelly, we have Ethan Nwaneri, kids who came through or are coming through from the academy. Okay, it's 1 year on from that. Apart from that, we know of like Matt Dowman coming through.
Max, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, Max. Well, to his friends, he's actually called Matt.
Fair
If
point.
you're
You would
know.
Yeah,
a little closer to the. I'm sure Clive will back me on that one.
Absolutely.
But it makes my point. That's exactly my point, Elliot. Right? Who's the guy? Who's the next Smith Rowe? Who's the next? You look at. Strangely, I go to like United. How often did they get bailed out by an Alanga or a Garnacho who just happened to be there and available in the academy level? Why don't we have that next kid at the academy level in the attacking area where he's not there for forever, but coming into this particular period, there's a kid who's like 18 or so, 17 or so, who's a top level, who's itching to get into the frame, and is your Garnacho, Alanga, Smith Rowe, whoever happens to be coming through. We seem to have a bit of a miss in the attacking end of the. Oh God, Clive's giving me the head shake.
Would it be Butler Oyedeji? I mean, he's the one who has been on benches, but I think the only thing I'd say to that, Paul and Clive, I want to get your take on that, is I think it's a little bit hard to say that when like you're lucky to ever have any first team participants come from your academy. And we currently have 2 who are 17 and 18 who are not only coming from our academy, but have basically made themselves starters in this period. So we're actually ahead of where most clubs would expect to be,
I think that's a good. Can I maybe shorten it up? Yeah. They're like a level above, right? I'm talking about the one that comes like in the whole attacking space, a winger on either side. Why don't we have one who's itching to get into the team, but not quite where Nwaneri is, or not
a break glass in case of emergency type player who can give us some minutes? Clive, is there something like that?
A few games, yeah.
You see, it's a tough one, Paul. The Ethan and Miles thing, they've infected our brains, right? Because they are they are sent down from the gods. I mean, they are chiseled out of oak. Look at their physicality
and alabaster.
They look at their physicality. They are.
I don't look at their physicality. That got me into trouble before.
Yep. Best that we just look at their talent.
Yeah, and look at their talent on the ball. It's just ridiculous. Look at them. So they are at the level. It's quite clear they're at the level. And and then there's another one coming around the corner. He's still just turned 15. So he's not even doing his first exam still.
You're talking about Matt?
Yeah, my mate Matt.
Maddie. By the way, not eligible to play for us in the league.
He's too young
legally.
Yeah.
Yes, too young legally.
And he's still, he's super talented, right? But he's still incredibly young. Don't worry about him. He's on his way, right? He's on his way. But what else are there? There are a number of younger players that I think are quite interesting to look at. There is a guy called Cabia, who's a winger. He's quite quick. But again, when you see him, and I've seen him, He's very, very small. Very, very small. It wouldn't survive. Butler, Daisy, whatever his name is, again, physically not at the level for me. Very, would go to a League One, League Two club who would go out on loan. Charles Sago Jr., I think he was at Shrewsbury for a while, was on their bench. Right, he's played for us, had a debut in a League Cup game, looked fine. That'll be my first look at, because I've seen him. But again, he struggled to get in Shrewsbury's team, I think. And so there is a level, Paul, where they do well at the academy level, but then there's my line. You have your academy players, then you have your Tom Cruises, and you hope to get a Tom Cruise in every
Loved
year,
him.
right?
Loved him.
Yeah, and we've got 2 lead actors at the same academy year, basically, which is like, wow.
To be fair, Tom Cruise is a lead actor. I think we can agree with that.
I'm to say,
did I have to say it?
No, you misread me.
But you don't think...
No, you misread me. In every academy year, you have your academy players and you have your Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is the guy that's special, right? And that's the guy that you need to be pushing, that you want to think can get to your level, which is Champions League level, which is global level, not national level, right?
Right.
And then you have your support actor players who are really good players, building their careers, could end up anywhere in the league, sometimes into non-league, good people that you want to make sure they have careers in football. But then you have Tom Cruise. And that's Ethan and Miles, right? So that's the difference. So you're asking these guys who are different level, who have a different ambition. We just seen a guy called Maldini who's just left Kakuri. He's just gone to Bromley, League Two. Right, he's played for us in the first team. Going to be a good player, good league career, good professional. He's not going to get past Ben White and them guys. Just isn't, right? It's just a different level. There's no critique of him. Trust me, he has beaten so many people to get there, to even get a pro contract. I mean, how many levels he's gone through? He's a hero, right? He's in the 0.1% to actually get where he's going to get. And Arsenal are educating him to go and have a great career elsewhere. And so this is the challenge. But we look at them, why can't they come in and play? Well, this is what we need to do. There has been a lot of investment needs to go into the academy. There's been an investment into a link with private schools, which help us to attract players, because they make sure education is looked after. This is the stuff you need to do to get the better talent away from Chelsea and Man City, because they're our chief adversaries, shall we say, in this space. And we're in that. We're doing this properly now, rather than just rocking up and saying, we're the Arsenal, come play for us. You've got to have the whole package now to get these top boys. And with the rules, with EPPP, and the fact you can get these players out even when they're 16, before they sign professional contracts, do not think for 1 second that Max Dowman's family is not being inundated with offers to go to other clubs. So we have to make sure we look after him, promote him, and the same for any others that are coming through. There's another guy called, I always get his name on, Andre Harriman-Anus. He's a forward.
Mm-hmm.
If I got a name wrong, please, apologies. I just know him.
That is the name. Whether that's how you pronounce it, I don't know.
Yeah, and so I've seen him play in my own eyes, and I liked him straight away. Looks like Chido, but bendier, more athletic in a way, not so stiff-legged. A year older maybe on age, but looks really good. I'm interested to watch his career develop. I don't know his level yet, but I like the look of him. He looks interesting. There's another young lad called Dan Casey, very young. I like the look of him. There's others that are coming behind. There's particularly under 16 level that I know I won't mention because it's unfair. But yeah, there is talent there that's coming through. The guy called Cedric O'Neill, they got over from Ireland, who I like the look of. Again, he's young. He's not ready for this level yet, but they're being prepared. And that's the thing. And they're being platformed and prepared. And I do find it so interesting to see what comes next, Paul. We have an emergency situation. Those guys, I don't think they can cover it. They're not ready yet.
No.
But there is good work ongoing. That's all I can say.
Well, I would say that there's another more pointed question then. I'll just give it to you, Paul, and it's not one that anyone asked, but I think it relates to this. And by the way, if anyone's just saying, did I just take crazy pills for that last segment of the podcast? I do want to explain what just happened. Clive was making an analogy about Ethan and Miles and how you have them, and then you have your Tom Cruise. And I thought he was talking about former Arsenal Academy player Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
And
me
I
too.
was trying to make an analogy to the actor Tom Cruise, who was a lead actor. Whereas Clive was actually talking about the actor, which I only realized too late. And so if you're wondering what that moment was, it was the problem that Arsenal have had a player named Tom Cruise.
Long time ago.
And a long time ago. Yeah, a long time ago. Well, we're all of us have been around since a long time ago. But Paul, look, you're saying, oh, is there someone in the academy? Is there someone? All right, maybe you get a Sego Jr. or a Butler or Yedege to play the last 10 minutes of a game we're winning 4-1. But here's a question. Apparently, we did have an option to recall Vieira from his loan and chose not to. Now, nobody's going to sit here and pretend Fabio Vieira is going to come on and be Lionel Messi for us, but he can play wide. He can play attacking midfield. He can play at our level in a pinch. And he's been playing and he's been staying fit, at least recently for Porto. Like, I have to say, I am stunned that we didn't take that decision. I mean, that to me looks hard to defend unless Mikel just flat out does not like him, doesn't want him on the boat, doesn't think he meets the non-negotiables, had a falling out, whatever the case is, in which case you can't legislate for that. But are you as surprised as I am, Paul? Because like, there does become an emergency scenario where people are saying we should have done a dry loan for a 19-year-old out of the Bundesliga. If you think a Matty Stell would have helped us, Fabio Vieira is a player who knows us, who's played for us, who we own. So surely that seems like an option we could have taken up, unless the reporting is wrong. But what do you think of that?
No, I think you absolutely can't do that. People are people too, you know. Like, he's a player, he's a person. It's going quite well for him. You can't phone him up and say, hey, Fabio, I know we basically never played you and wasn't working out for you in the Premier League, but we want to dump on your career progression here, pull you out of a situation that's good for you and do a thing that works for us for like 3 weeks. And as soon as we have a fit player back, you're out again. And I'm not really going to, like, you just can't do that to people. I think it would be an absolutely horrendous thing to do. We've cut our cloth. We have to live with it. Squad harmony, player. Like, you don't want to pull a guy back who's like, for the first time in a couple of years, doing well, feeling good. You know, he wasn't the most extroverted player within the Arsenal. I just I don't know that it buys you enough. It's not worth the squeeze. And it's like, what are you saying to other players when they come to the club, when they join the club? We're going to look after you. We're going to do what's best for you and the club. Those should be the same things. Like, if he was phenomenal and he was going to change our season, well, maybe you look deep into your soul and do the dark thing. But I just don't get the sense that it was worth the squeeze, and that, like, if you're going to crap on people, it better be worth it. I think it would have been so harsh.
So 5 years ago on this podcast, we would be in a screaming argument right now. The nice thing is we're not 5 years ago. We love each other. We've become dear friends.
One of us has grown.
One of us has grown.
I'm not sure which one of us.
The other of us,
we're not going to argue.
Just generally both physically and emotionally, has quite clearly never grown. So I'm simply going to say this. That is a perspective that you've just given me that I would not have considered. And I find interesting and different from the one that I myself hold.
Where you would have crapped on him.
No, yeah, I would have. I mean, I tend to take a more dim view of the human side of this and think this is what the money's for. Arsenal owns his contract. He's extremely well paid. Arsenal needs his services at this time. And when you are loaned out, it is always possible that the club that owns your contract will need your services back. And that while it is not the ideal thing for the player is paid by Arsenal Football Club. He made a choice to come to Arsenal Football Club, knowing all the risks and challenges that might face him trying to step up to that level. And now that club has a need for him as a player. And so your point is totally valid and understandable. I just would operate differently. And maybe, that's the less human way. And you may be correct that sends the wrong message to players. Having said that, I think there's an alternative view, Paul, which is that the player himself look, he came to Arsenal because presumably he wants to make more money, but presumably also wanted to show what he could do under the bright lights of the Premier League. And maybe he'd come back and say, I've been playing well. They need me. I have a window here to finally make my Arsenal career start. So, he might come back with full of piss and vinegar and ready to make an impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, they may have called him and said, hey, Fabio, what are you up to these days? And then sidled into, and like if he turned around and said, I'd really like to come back and show what I can do. I'm going to imagine a conference. This is how it should have worked, to your point, right? And he says, I want to come back and prove a point. Great. But if what he said was, Mikel, no. It's going really well here. I know how this plays out. You're going to use me for a couple of weeks. I'm not happy. I don't want to do it. And Mikel says, I fully respect that. Now, your point was, hey, we pay you the big bucks. That's how it is. We employed you. These things can happen. That's why you get paid the big bucks. But that's not the pitch Arsenal makes, at least not my view of it. I think Arsenal says, we look to progress your career, to do the right things by you. Different things may happen. We will do the thing. That's how they get players in, right? Your model is the Chelsea model, which is we pay you the big bucks. In fact, we pay you extra. We overpay you. That's why
just to defend my position,
you a pawn of our game.
I'm not saying you tell every player we are buying you and the money is the only reason. I'm just saying Clive, come in here because there are emergency situations, right? Like, Paul, we are at an edge case where you're like, should Charles Sago Jr. have minutes? Like we're way out on the edge case here.
I think it's very, I think you're both right, shall we say.
There you go.
Is one of us more right than the other?
I think you're both right because Paul's absolutely right. How you treat players is how you attract players down the road, right? So, and how you prioritize their careers, their development. And so we may have a relationship with Porto, for example, where we don't want to take a player away from them at a critical juncture in their season. There's a player there that I wouldn't mind coming to Arsenal who plays centre forward. Maybe who knows what's being said in the background, right? So there is that. The way Chelsea treated Trevor Chalobah, for example, he was literally told to train with kids in pre-season, was not allowed even given a squad number. He went out on loan belatedly to Crystal Palace, was ripping it up at Crystal Palace. They have a problem. They lose Fofana. They get an injury back there. And what they do? They rip him out of Crystal Palace to come back to play. If I was him, I'd have told him to do one myself because they embarrassed me, And but he's now back and he's now back playing for Chelsea, and no doubt he's got a few quid in his bin for it, right? So and so to Chelsea's morals, not Arsenal's morals. It's simple as that. We don't sell hotels to ourselves. And we haven't got our captain of last season playing in Madrid because we couldn't keep him because we overspent in other areas. So they've got different model, right? Completely different. So you're both sort of right. And the Vieira thing, it crossed my mind too. I read the article. I saw there was a window there. I thought, and Elliot, you said something a few weeks ago, which I thought was really interesting and it was really astute from yourself. You said the Vieira thing was a possibility that we should get him in at the time we were worried about our form to protect our floor. And I'm not saying that's the same criticality around that, because I think we've reached a level now I think we'll be fine for the top four, for example. However, that player, he's good enough to play for Arsenal Football Club, and we own him. So I can't dismiss your point of view. So you're both right. Do you see what I mean? You're both right. And I think it's much more about relationships going forward that we have with clubs, with players, to make sure we do right by them.
I got some good questions about the transfer window. I've got some good questions about the players that need to step up if our season is going to go where we hope it goes. So I want to get to those, and I don't want this to go on all day, but that means I got to tell you, not just got to tell you, want to tell you because I love you and care about you. About NordVPN. That's right, NordVPN. We all know about NordVPN at this point. I don't think there's much left that I need to tell you about, but NordVPN is an app. You can put it on your phone. You can put it on your tablet. You can put it on your computer. You click a button and you're browsing in another location. And the benefit of that is that you can watch those social media videos that are geo-locked. You can watch the match reviews of the day show that you may not be able to watch otherwise. You can travel over to other countries and stream back to your country. So when I'm over in London and I'm there and I want to watch United lose at 3 p.m., I'm not subject to that blackout because I can NordVPN back to the US and I can watch Manchester United lose at 3 p.m. while getting ready to go watch Arsenal win at the Emirates. So it's really helpful for that. It does have threat protection. It is extremely affordable. And also, by the way, gets really high rankings for its speed because you don't want your VPN to slow down the speed of your device. So that's really good. Something to know about the quality of it. Very easy to use. And look, you can just essentially try it out because the deal they have for you is a good one. Grab an exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. It's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. And Manscaped. It's the Beard and Balls Bundle 2025. That's right. That's what they call it. And that's what I'm calling it. Take care of your skin and skip the cuts and irritation with the Beard and Balls Bundle, your all-in-one grooming solution to keep you polished from head to toe, or more precisely, from beard to balls. Look, they write it. I read it. There are over 12 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, and you can use promo code ArsenalVision for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. So the Beard Hedger and the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the Beard and Balls Bundle. Lets you take care of all this stuff. The Beard Hedger has 20 adjustable settings on a flywheel, so you can get right to the size you want. There's a dual blade system on the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, so you have foil and a trimmer, so you can go completely smooth if that's the way you like things down there. Look, they're good, high-quality tools. You're going to trim your beard, or you're going to shave your privates, and you're going to do it either with a good or a bad tool. I would say do it with good tools. Waterproof design, long-lasting battery life, travel-friendly, and it's risk-free with the 30-day money-back guarantee. So don't cut corners on your grooming routine. Upgrade to the Beard and Balls Bundle from Manscaped. Visit manscaped.com and use code ArsenalVision to get 20% off and free shipping. That's manscaped.com, code ArsenalVision to get 20% off and free shipping. Now, I do want to tell you that this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't online therapy. It's therapy that happens to be online. And the fact of the matter is, therapy is good. Therapy is healthy. Therapy is you working to be the best you and not let your brain get in the way of your happiness, which it sometimes does. And we have all experienced moments like that. And so I would say that, the way to ensure that you get the best experience from therapy is to do it, right? And if you never get started, you never get the benefit. So if getting in a car and driving to an office is hard, or finding someone nearby is hard, like those kind of things can hold you back. And this is a way that you can do it from your home at a time that works for you with someone that really fits your needs. In a way that is affordable. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with diverse variety of expertise in mental health. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month with BetterHelp.com/vision. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Okay. Now, there's one more. I know it's a lot, but we got to do it. And it's Shopify. Basically, look, the thing about Shopify is I have used it. I haven't necessarily used every single product that we talk about on the pod, but I have used Shopify. And it's crazy. Like sometimes in my career, I've worked with big companies and I'll be talking to them about their website, big companies, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollar companies. And they're like, oh yeah, we use Shopify. Like the biggest companies in the world use Shopify, and I've used Shopify, and it's crazy. It can support any kind of business. If you want to start a business in 2025, Shopify will let you build a professional-looking website that integrates to your social media sites, where you drag and drop, you plop in your products, describe them, and then it takes care of things like the cart and the checkout process and the taxes and the shipping stuff. If someone's going to buy from you, they want to have the confidence in the website they see. They want to look professional, or maybe they want to shop natively from Instagram or so on and so forth. Shopify lets you do that. You can get a $1 per month trial, which is pretty cool. $1 a month to try opening a business at Shopify. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. That's Shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Do it now, Clive? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Emphatically enough of that, I think we can say. But we did get there in the end. Clive, I think that this is actually an interesting one before we get into the transfer stuff, because I think it's a question that we're going to need to address. And I like the way it's phrased because it's phrased in the ArsenalVision parlance here from Robin. Which players need to be a stock rising between now and the end of the season if we're going to run Liverpool close and go deep in the Champions League?
Which players need to be a stock rising?
Yeah, essentially, like, right, who, if we did a stock rising for February 10th to May 31st, which player or players do we need to say was the stock rising of that period if we're going to go on and do something special the rest of this season?
I think it's a couple really. I got give a couple. I think there's one player in Havertz that we need him to be good, and need him to stay healthy. So I may be more of a need. A player that really dictates our level, I think, has got the most room to improve, because Havertz, whether you like him or not, he has delivered a set of numbers which have been okay. And if people around him have delivered similar numbers, we'd be in a better place. And that the chief person around him that needs to deliver more numbers is Martin Odegaard. And he's the one that controls our ceiling. I think it's quite clear, really. And if he's doing what we know he can do when he's right and ready to go, then I think he covers many sins, shall we say. So I think the light is definitely shining towards him, and his role is so important because he's such an example leader, and he's struggling a little bit. To see someone that sets the example, almost doesn't even have to think about his own game because he's helping others do theirs. I think it's quite a tough one for him, because he's now having to internalize to find his game, and while he's doing that, he maybe can't lead in the same way. So tough one for him, tough one. But he's the one, Elliot, for me.
Yeah, I think Odegaard is the clear answer. But Paul, do you have a different opinion?
Well, I thought it was Odegaard too. I think what's really interesting to me, first off, Clive is right. But if I'm going to slide another player next to him, it would be Odegaard. Because if we're still, I don't have quite the same frustration I've seen out there with Odegaard as some, maybe as you, Elliot, but I totally get it, which is he's not totally at the races. He's not full. I think he's going to be absolutely fine when he comes back from Dubai. I think he's going to be fine and firing. But if the debate is still going on about, you saw the Twitter debate about the captaincy and blah blah blah, we need a leader and this kind of and people thinking they need to move away from Odegaard because that's the level of that people are infected and affected by the fact that Odegaard is a bit off his game. It's just it's souring everybody in terms of all aspects of the attack, of his role, almost on and off the pitch. And I think that's a symptom of how essential he is to the team, even though I would say he's playing for any normal player. He's still a very valuable player on the pitch in those games where people are frustrated by him. He's just not at Odegaard levels. I think he's a phenomenal leader. I don't really have much issue with him, except I think we could all come up with the reasons why he's not quite at the races. And we lack some brilliance in the attacking third. We're not going to win the Champions League, I don't think. We're not going to win reel in Liverpool in the Premier League if we can't also say that Martin Odegaard had a brilliant run in, that he was back to his best. When he's at his best, which he seems to be able to do for 75% of any season, he's unbelievable and incredible. And right now, he's just a very good player. Off the ball, he's a brilliant player. I'd fight anybody of the Man City game where people said maybe he wasn't that great. I'm like, go back and look at him. What he does in terms of the pressing, the energy, and his general play, it's just not at brilliant Martin Odegaard levels. So we say, oh, he's way out of form. He kind of is way out of form. He's just still really, really good.
Yeah. Well, I think basically it's pretty clear, right, that the players that need to be stock risings the rest of the season are players either who haven't been playing at the level we'd like them to be, or play the positions where we're short and need things to go right. Right. So, do I want Saliba and Gabriel and Miles Lewis-Skelly and Timber to have good rest of the seasons? Of course I do. But they're having good seasons already. You're not going to pick them, right? Rice seems like he's in good form. So in a way, it's a bit of an obvious question, because you're either going to pick a player you feel has been underperforming, or you're going to pick a player in a position that we just don't have a lot. I mean, you could argue that the right answer is Bukayo Saka. Because if Bukayo Saka is a stock rising between here and the rest of the season, that means he came back, he played well. And if he does that, we're going to be very good. I just, obviously I hope we're sensible and careful about how we handle that. There's a lot of questions about summer transfers, and I want to be sort of cautious about how we ask them, because some of them are asked kind of in a way that obviously has a negative valence, and I don't necessarily want to do that. But let me ask you an Arteta question, and this one comes from Sleeponomics in the Discord. And Clive, I mean, I think it is a little bit of a look. I don't think it's a question we need to answer now, but I do think it's a question because I think it'll be a question for the man himself. At what point do we question if Arteta is the right man to get us over the line for a big trophy? And then he does put in parentheses, I believe he's the second best manager in the world, for the record. So he's not asking it from a standpoint of not trusting Mikel. But I do think this is an interesting question. Unless you think the 20-year managerial appointment is still a thing, and I'm less sure that it is. At what point does the manager come in focus even if you rate him? You know what I mean? Even if, because I do rate him, I want him to stay. And at this moment, I have no question. But is there a point where that you think that will become a conversation?
Yeah, so we all have our measures on the manager. Some people say, he's been here 5 years, he only won one trophy. That's your measure. That's your choice. But again, it goes back to our improvement. We've improved. We're in second year in Champions League now, so we're going to get second year of revenues. Hopefully, we're going to spend some of that in the summer. And so I look at it slightly differently. The things that concern me, if I'm looking at the risk factors around Arteta, this will be it for me. His intensity, making some of his relationships inside the club hard to manage over a long period of time. So it's quite clear to me that he wants it more than anybody, including any of us. And he just does. And he is so laser focused on it. Not everyone can coexist with that. Eddie Jones is my favorite rugby coach. He was such a hard-working, such a high-demanding person that coaches would just burn out, and they couldn't stay with him. He'd have to renew them all the time. You know, so I think that is one of the key things for me that I got my eyes on. I think Eddie was a good balancing act for that, and he's no longer there. Again, this is just my opinion from the outside. So I do think that guy, that type of individual, that character, I think I'd like to see that person or a person like that back. That's one of the key things. I think relationships in the club, so that's one thing, but relationship with players, I never worry about a bad substitution or bad team selection because they'll fix it. Analyze it, look at the data, fixed. Next game, it's done. Right? I do care about managed relationships with the key pillars in the team, which he seems to have done really, really well. They've all re-signed. So one of the measures is going to be when they re-sign again. We know who they are. Right? So that's number 2. Right? And the third one is tactical evolution. Right? So I think tactical evolution, I think he's really, really good at understanding the balances, understanding the units that play together. There's a tactical discussion going on right now around the globalization of positional play in the league versus other styles in the league. I quite like our style. I think it's a combination of both. I think the key thing for Arsenal to develop is recruitment, because I'm a big believer in recruitment and players drive your style. The player profiles drive your style. You know, so I think getting the recruitment right and getting the development of those players right, which I think they are excellent at, will drive your style naturally. So those are the key things for me. And so I never worry about a team selection. You know what I'm like. I always got to raise my eyes and I go, oh, God. Because these are the things that will make sure he stays or not. When people don't want to look at him in team meetings, they no longer believe in him. That's the stuff you need to worry about. You know, that's the stuff. Because the moment that happens, you're done. You know, and I haven't seen any inkling of that. Whenever I go and watch the team, I see players absolutely emptying the tank for their manager. So that's why I always get excited when I see that. I try to get that across in the podcast. So yeah, those are the barriers for me. Those are the risk factors for him going forward, and I'm sure they're managing that as we speak.
Yeah, I would suggest that any frustration with the club at the moment is frustration around transfer business more than it is what we're getting out of the players that are on the pitch. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that aren't happy with that either. We're out of some cups. There have been results we don't like. I think some of that could have been ameliorated had we done the transfer business we needed to do. And so, because I don't think we go out to United if we had one more really good forward option. Right now, you might say, well, that one more forward option is Bukayo Saka, and he's just not there at the moment. But I do think we've left ourselves short in that area. And so, Paul, well, Clive, you want to come back to that?
I just want to run this by you two because
Mhm.
I sort of we all look at we all want players, right? We all do. I spend half my life on YouTube, right? I'm looking at a guy called Hugo in Teke right now at Frankfurt. Really good player. I want him. Looks really good. Could be better than Sesko. Not sure yet, but I'm studying him, right? To see where he is and comparing him. Love it. Absolutely love it. But one thing that's not clear to me is all of this regulation around the game. You know, I just think it's making us think, oh, we want transfers, but we haven't got the other side of the picture. We don't know what we can do. So we're getting angry about something we're not sure about. We're not clear about, you know? And when I see these pieces that come out post the transfer window closing, including James's article, Miguel Delaney's article, Simon Collins' article, Sam Dean's article, explain what happened in the transfer window, I know they're trying to add transparency around the process. But there's certain things regulatory-wise that we don't have transparency around. And so it's the only reason why I'm not losing my hair, right? It's because
Well, there's another reason you're not losing your hair, man.
metaphorically,
It's long gone.
because I don't
Yeah.
have the full picture. Now,
Metaphorically, I just did a pun. Metaphorically,
that's not excusing anybody from inaction, by the way. I just hold him my anger from a 6 to a 10. Do you know what I mean? He makes you think, what else is out there?
This is what's hard, right? Because I do get pulled in different intellectual directions, in diametrical directions.
I very much doubt it.
I do, I swear. And so, I mean, like, on the one hand, I think buying the wrong player is obviously a bad idea. I think going into the market when the player you need isn't there is a way to ruin a project, not a way to save a season. I also think we're now 2 windows of not buying an attacker when buying an attacker was the stated goal and we didn't do it. I think we don't know the picture around PSR and the UEFA cost controls as clear as we should. But also, you just look at it. Who's not spending a lot of money? Liverpool. They got an ownership group that's known for being frugal. Who's not spending a lot of money? United. They've got a financial picture that is not clear and not good. Who's not spending a lot of money? Arsenal. Maybe we have an ownership group that is more frugal than we've realized, and that actually the spending that has been provided to Mikel and the group was to get us back in the Champions League and restore us to the status where we believe we need to be, and will not be to support us winning titles when this ownership group has said, I don't buy teams to win titles. Who is spending money? Manchester City and Chelsea. Very different types of ownership groups. So it could be cost controls. It could be PSR. It could be the lack of the players out there we need. It could be, and I'm not saying it is, but we have to at least discuss it if we're going to be intellectually honest, that the ownership group is not going to go as far as needed to try to win a title, but is happy to try to win with a specific amount of spending that fits their model. And like I said, I don't know that to be the case, but I think to not even put it forward as a possibility is intellectually dishonest. It's only giving one side of the story. And so I've got a very long quote that I want to provide, but and it came in the form of a question. I think it's a really interesting one. So this came from Gunnar G-Man14 on the Discord. He said, long-time listener, first-time Discorder. I'm a huge NBA fan, and my antennas went up when listening to Hoop Collective, hosted by renowned ESPN NBA journalist Brian Windhorst. This is a passage about the Kroenkes' attitude towards the NBA GMs, specifically their own track record with Denver Nuggets. What follows now is a quote from Brian Windhorst. So this isn't coming from me or anyone, but he's a good journalist in the NBA beat. The general manager of the Nuggets, and by the way, for people who don't follow this stuff, general manager is essentially like director of football, right? Like the DOF. The general manager of the Nuggets, whom Masai replaced, was Mark Workington. Mark Workington and I were friends, and Mark Workington had been let go. He was executive of the year and got let go. Like many executives over the years who have been very good by the Nuggets, had been let go basically because Stan Kroenke, the owner, doesn't like to pay executives. Long story short. The most recent one was Tim Connolly, but Mark Workington was one. Masai Ujiri was one. Tim Connolly was one. We'll see what happens with Calvin Booth. So Mark Workington had been let go. He couldn't come to terms on a contract. He had been executive of the year. He wasn't fired. He just contract ran out. And then the question, he said, is if Arsenal decided to promote Jason Ato as Ado's replacement, now knowing their track record with Denver, what message do you think it will send to all of us fans? Would you be confident that the Kroenkes are prepared to do what it takes to take Arsenal to the next level? And again, I am reading that word for word verbatim. That is apparently a quote from Windhorst about the NBA and about the Nuggets. It is not necessarily reflective of Arsenal. It is not necessarily even all the facts on the ground. It is Windhorst's reporting. But Paul, it is a question that I think, again, if we're going to be intellectually honest, is fair to put in the record and ask.
It's fair to ask. And going back a few years, I think there wouldn't be too much to say. You would say we're behaving like a club that works within a fixed budget, and whatever the club can do with that, good luck to them. Stan Kroenke did say whatever about the best part of a decade ago. Hey, you don't buy a sports team to win stuff, right? Which, to be honest, I don't have that much of a problem about if it's business people talking to business people in the sports industry. It's one of those things, people don't like you saying what's actually true. Did anybody think that Stan Kroenke bought Arsenal because he wanted to win stuff? It was just the fact that he actually said it. It didn't mean he didn't want to win things. It's good for business when you win. There's a trade-off, right? Now, I think that was reflective of the situation up to a point to a few years ago. And then we started spending money like drunken sailors. Fortunately, drunken sailors with some level of taste. Like, a lot of the players we bought are good.
Yeah.
And we tended to overpay for certain players that it turned out were actually really good and then performed even better than we paid for them. We have £100 million Declan Rice. And we set our mind to it and we went after it. We bought, what was it? Was he, I always forget his first name. Was it 72 million or 73 million, Nicolas Pepe?
72, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm terrible on first names. And that was going way back. We bought Lacazette, we bought Aubameyang in basically 6 months of each other. We spent a lot of money. They've overspent. They've invested. They spent more money than the club had. They didn't wait to sell players to buy players. But there's a limit, right? And if your measure of they don't want to win things is eventually they stop, they live within a certain gravity of finance, then yeah, I can see. So there's Chelsea, there's City. There's clubs who are absolutely within a budget. I think the Kroenkes, here's what I think the Kroenkes want. Stands a different face to Josh. Josh, I think, has probably infused Stan with some energy and some desire for the future rather than just now. They want to position Arsenal to be one of the top clubs in the world, and that takes spending and positioning, and that's where we're at. They spent money. We're one of the best two teams in the league every year. We're a Champions League contender, at least for quarters and semi-finals, and they would love to win stuff. But they're not going to spend it. And why would? Because the European Super League is not a thing necessarily at the moment. But that whole orbit, there's stuff going on with clubs spending money to position themselves to be one of the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the Premier League, because there's a future of football they want to be part of, and you can't half-ass it. So they spend a lot of money to get us into that position where we're one of the best 2-3 clubs in England season after season.
Clive?
Yeah, Paul sort of got there. I think when they say things like, oh, you don't buy a sports organisation to win things, I think what they're really saying is we have priorities, right? So if you look at what they've done to support the club from a playing perspective, but also the hires that they've made that have reconnected the club, right? So I think that's really key. I think and also reposition the club from a sporting angle, from a squad value angle. So our squad value when in 2018 compared to what it is now, and versus our wages, there are other priorities that businessmen have. Wages to revenue, for example, but also squad value. That's really key. We had an aging squad on Champions League money. Now we have a squad away from its peak with the 5th highest wage bill in the Champions League and starting to have a much more sustainable future, right? So a business person will put that way ahead of winning things. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to win things, but that facilitates winning, All of those things facilitates winning. We've got to get those things right. So the priorities need to be almost like pillars that feed the overall mission statement, which is to be the best team in the world, blah, blah, blah. To do that, you need to win things. We don't need to say it. Do you see what I mean? You need to do all the things that support that action. So I always, when I hear that statement, I think people then misuse it and say, well, that's why he never signed Isak. Do you see what I mean? And it's like, well, I remember scouting Isak, Elliot. Remember when we scouted him? We did a little bit on him. We liked him. We thought the price was probably 10 mil too high. And he had a bad injury record. We weren't sure. A few months later, we buy Jesus, and we're happy as anything. We're super happy. Got Jesus. We know who he is. We know he's got a track record in the league. Super happy. Here we are a few years later. Jesus has got his leg up and he's out running around like Thierry Henry. Right? So, and then the club will get criticised for not making that decision. Do you see what I mean? And then
I do.
And that could feed back into the owners.
I think that's a great point, Clive, because the other person who wanted Jesus was Mikel Arteta, and they've generally got him the players by and large he wanted.
There you go, Paul.
This is the thing I want to say.
Sorry.
So you have to deal with the facts as they exist. You don't get to make up the facts, right? And because we didn't do the business in January, that doesn't change the facts as they exist. So all I would say is, have KSE been willing to spend the money to buy the players that Mikel and Edu asked for? And it seems they have. They were willing to go into the 70 million plus range for Mykhailo Mudryk. We know that. That is well-sourced reporting. Boy, would that have been a mistake. And you make a mistake like that, and you go back to the owners asking for more money, and maybe they say, why are we going to give you more money? Look what you did with it this time, right? But we do know, by and large, as far as the reporting is available, that when the director of football or sporting director and the manager have asked for a player, the money has been available to get that player. Now, there may have been cases where that wasn't the case, and I don't know. I confess I don't know. I would say this, that you only get to have one answer to the question of who's to quote unquote blame for not getting business done. Is it the sporting director and the manager for not identifying the targets that we could get done? Or is it the club for not approving the funds? And as of this moment, I don't have any good examples of us wanting a player and the funds not being there to get the player. Now, that doesn't mean those examples don't exist. So at least for now, I'm prepared to believe that in the summer, if we identify the targets and the targets are willing to come to Arsenal, and the director of football says, I've got the value, I've got the player, it's the one Mikel wants, we need the money for this player, I believe we will get it. But if we don't, then we'll have to come back and revise this viewpoint, and we'll just have to see. But I do think that this is a good question to move on to then, Clive. Clive Sham asks, at Shamsdale, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Arsenal will adequately address the squad's needs, and what do you think those needs will be, in the coming summer, based on what they've done in the last few transfer windows? What's your confidence level that will address what's needed? And I think we know what's needed, right? In particular, a forward, a striker, probably. What's your confidence level will address it in the summer based on what's happened in the last couple of windows?
Yeah, so I think it's more than a striker. I think we need a second goalkeeper, who I believe that we've already spoken to. So let's see what happens there. We're going to need another defender, and that will depend on exits, but there could be Zinchenko going, Kivior going, so that's...
Saliba to Madrid, don't forget that.
Yeah, and so, I don't know, why would you drop that in there and just make me feel sick, right? So, but this is all interlinked, by the way. So it looks like we've got a holding midfielder coming in, which makes a lot of sense, with a couple of aged players going out. Again, that's good renewal. And in the forward areas, we've got centre forward that's out for a year, so we have to replace that guy. And we do need another wide player as well to make sure that we can manage the schedule more effectively than this year, because there's pictures right now on our timelines with Bukayo Saka in the gym working out and with a scar on his hamstring, and it's a stark reminder of where he is and what he's given to the team over the last 4 years. And so we have to make sure that we manage him and other players in those high output repeat sprint positions, right? So, and we have to do it, Elliot. You know why we have to do it? Because of that bloke who's got a scar on his hamstring, we want him to stay. Because of Saliba, we want him to stay as well. Because these are generational players that need to feel that their club really wants to push ambition-wise, really wants to improve their day-to-day facilities, really wants to think about how we can develop certain parts of their game, the ground, for example. There are no doubt projects that are way down the road that need to be funded, and there are players that need to be renewed. And Mikel said it. He said it in the press conference when we were all upset we didn't get forward. He said, "What have you done?" He said, "Well, we've been working on renewals." And there are key players, 2 young players that need to be renewed, right? Massive, very important. We need to make sure that the people that are the Tom Cruises of this group are here. Do you see what I mean? They're absolutely here and they don't go anywhere, because that is not something. Don't worry about getting upset about a striker you haven't seen before play for us. What about the ones we do see that we don't want them to cross the road too quickly because they're that important to us? Do you see what I mean? Don't worry about people we haven't seen yet. So that's
Yeah.
really, really key for me. And honestly, I think it's a major measure of where we're heading. Before people want to fire the manager out of a gun, now you'll know when that moment's right, mate. And it ain't here yet. It ain't here yet.
Yeah, and I do think there tends to be a predictable cycle about how clubs or teams fall apart, and it tends to be lose a game, blame a player, lose 2 games, blame the manager, lose 3 games, blame the owner, right? Like, just watch Manchester United, right? 3 losses in a row, the green and gold scarves come out, right? So it's like, the Norwich scarves are out after 3. So you do have to step back and look at all the facts on the ground. And one of the important details is, do we offer the money to keep our players? And we have done that pretty well. We have gotten contracts done. We need a sporting director, by the way, though, because there are important contracts that need to be resolved. So that's one that has to get done. Paul, let me give you an impossible question then, since I referenced it, and we might as well ask it. This one comes from David Barrett. Are we at the point where a huge bid for Saliba would have to be considered? Add the $130 million to the war chest. I think it's easier to find a right-footed center back. Once Madrid comes sniffing, not many turn them down. We can't end up in a Trent Alexander-Arnold situation. Learn from previous mistakes. Look, I don't want Saliba going anywhere. Is there a component in this where reality sets in and you say, we can't be in a situation where we're title contenders next season and in January, Saliba to Madrid is all anybody's talking about? Like, is there a world where you have to take a Madrid bid for Saliba, or is this just nonsense? He wants to be here, he'll stay.
Well, I'm sure he wants. Look, there's a lot going on in these things. The answer as to what we should do is we don't take the bid now. He's going to get better. Madrid are going to want him even more in a couple of years' time. So whatever way you want to look at this, 130 million now, 180 million in a couple of years' time.
270 million when he's 35.
270 million.
To be fair, they've got to solve their center back problem, right? So like they're going to solve it. If it's not Saliba, it'll be someone else. They're not going to wait to solve that squad issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they'll sign somebody and they'll want Saliba because he's much better than him in 2 years' time. From our standpoint, when was the last time we sold a player that we wanted to keep? It's forever.
That's a good point. It's been a long time since we've done that. Now, having said that, we haven't had a very good squad for a long time. This is the first time we have players we want to keep. We might have liked our players to catch £100 million bids a little while ago.
Yeah, but still. Who was it? Was it Van Persie, the last player we sold that we didn't want to sell?
Well, Alexis, we wanted to move at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it might be Van Persie. I'm not thinking of anybody who left that we wanted to keep. Yeah.
Now, I also agree, yada, yada, we haven't always had the greatest squad. But still, come on, guys. If you want to give the Cronkies some credit here, how do I always do this, Elliot? How am I in there defending the poor, beaten down billion-dollar owner?
Yeah,
American
won't someone think of the American billionaires?
Yeah, it's always me. But like, if you're going to give them some credit, they have held on to the players we have wanted to hold on to. They have rewarded them. They've upped their contracts. It's a great...
Which, to the point of the question, though, to the point of David's question, has been a mistake in many instances and wound up with contract cancellations and people leaving on freeze. So he's got a bit of a point about, like, have we made mistakes turning our nose up at selling players who caught big bids or at one point in time would have caught big bids,
Would I take 130 million for Saliba and spend it in the market? I don't think we'll need to. I think we'll spend the money we need for the player, for the big player we're going for. I think we'll go for the attacker we want. So the question is, would you use the 100? To me, the question becomes, would I use 130 million for other players in the squad? Because we will buy the attacker that Mikel wants within some level of reason.
Yeah.
The
I wouldn't
Isaac
do it
question,
if it were
I
me.
get it. It's going to be a lot of money. I don't know it's going to be doable for us at any kind of commercially reasonable number that we would want to do, whether we had the money or not. So I'm pretty chill about the Saliba thing. I think at some stage he might want to do something different.
Yeah.
But I don't think he leaves if we don't want him to leave, and I think he'll be happy staying here whether he likes it or not.
Can I tell you my view on it?
I hope
think the Saliba, the Gabriel contract renewal is really important because they're like brothers, them two, right? So if he stays, if Gabriel signs and he's treated right, I think he could have had a better contract, and he's treated right. I think there's a good chance Saliba stays, right? So, and then you get those two, mate. The manager will be buzzing with that because they're only going one direction, which is get better, right? So, if that,
and thank God, Gabriel's been brilliant, right? Because he's made that easier for the club.
Yeah.
He's been absolutely phenomenal.
And I think the club's position has changed on him. I think when Mikel speaks about him, he speaks about him changing his life and changing things, how he was living, etc. And now he is like a leader in the team. He's been given leadership responsibilities, has been our skipper. So I think he's really grown during the state of his contract. So he needs to be rewarded. Then I'm hopeful Saliba will stay. Yeah, I think it's a very important juncture. And the reason why he's got 2.5 years to go. In the summer, it'd be 2 years. If Madrid are in his ear, then they're not in his ear for now. They'd do a Trent job, wouldn't they? And they'll say to him, and they'll make it last, and they'll take him from us for free. And that's what we don't want. You know, we don't want
that. Absolutely can't.
And so this is what they do, right? They target people years in advance, and suddenly he's not signing, and he's got 15 months his contract left. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, and that number will not be 180 million then. Do you see what I mean? And then, of course, he doesn't sign them. We all know what's happening. That's what's happened to Liverpool. They're literally walking one of their key assets walk out. It could walk out for nothing, right? So we don't want that to happen. So I do think it's an important summer. And hence, back to my original thought process in this conversation today, there are greater measures for the club and the manager going forward than some of the things we think are important. This is a major, major thing for the next 3 years or so, for his contract length as a manager. This stuff is the stuff that really, really matters. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, well, I'll stay with you for a second then, Clive, because Adam on the Discord asks, what would you prefer happen in the summer, assuming the players linked with leaving do leave? 1, Isaac and Zubamendi. 2, Nico Williams, Sesko, and Zubamendi. 3, Sesko, Zubamendi, an attacking midfielder and a defender. Do you have sort of a preference of the priority of those options?
Well, the Isaac one I just don't see happening. You know, so
I don't either. I really don't.
And I am a bit of a, you know what I'm like, I'm a fluffy people developer, right? So I like to see players come in. I like to see us make our own. Nothing makes me happier than seeing Miles Lewis-Skelly stick one in Man City's net, made at Arsenal Football Club.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It means something to me. And so I like to see young people, even broken souls come in and do well. I like that. Maybe I've got to stop with that thought process because Declan Rice has shown you can buy the ready-made, but you can't do that all the time. Do you see what I mean? Because he costs a lot of money, right? So I do like the idea of a Sesko and a Zubamendi. The reason why I like Sesko, I did last year, is not because he's ready-made, because I think he coexists really well with Kai Havertz, and I think that's what we need, and that's in the full position. Zubamendi, that's obvious. If you watch Spain play and watch an Arsenal team play, it's not exactly hard to picture that going forward. Look at these age and timeline. We're perfect with Declan Rice. That makes a lot of sense. Much like our centre-backs, makes a lot of sense that we do that. And so the ages are just set up for the future. So we're not going anywhere if we get those deals sort of done. We also need a wide player. Nico Williams seems to be the one that seems to be out there right now. That can change in a tweet. I like the idea of him. I'm not sure if he really wants to be here, so I'm holding back some of my emotions on that one. I do like that Bradley Barcola at PSG. I gotta say, I like him a lot. I think his ceiling is absolutely anything, and he's literally getting better by the second. So I'm not sure if that's a possibility given what they've just bought, and I'm not sure how much that will cost. And PSG would be dumb to let him go, So whereas Nico Williams is gettable, Elliot. We all know what we need to do to get him. You need to pay us some
release clause.
pay us some, work out the schedule of payments. You want to pay a bit more, and negotiate a wage and convince him that this is where he needs to be. Right. So that's it for me. Those type of players. That's where I go rather than going all out for Isak, because I just don't think Arsenal can afford £130 million minimum to play on one player.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then this question from PTT49, Paul, leans into that a bit. What level of concern should we have around the club's recruitment strategy that's seemingly focused on the perfect solutions, perfect in quotes, potentially at the expense of good, great targets? It's getting increasingly worrisome, his words, not mine, that we seem to be transfixed on the likes of Nico Williams and Isak for a few windows now when they are major long shots to join. So far, the club isn't showing the ingenuity to pivot to other contingencies. Is this more down to temporary lack of a sporting director, something more structural with the club overall executive structure, philosophy? Or, and I'll add this, is it how you should operate? Only buy the guys you really want, so you don't wind up with guys you don't really want. And by the way, that's an open question. And I'll add one more thing to that. We could bring in Nico Williams and Benjamin Sesko in the summer, and they could both stink. There's not a short. Isak might be the only sure thing out there. We probably can't get him. So you're rolling the dice at some point. But what do you think of that, Paul? The idea that we've been potentially too locked on to the prime targets and haven't pivoted as well as maybe we should.
Well, it's a good question. I don't think we've done that. We bought Trossard, right? He's by nobody's definition the perfect player that we held on. Like
he was a great pivot from Mudryk, a great example of pivoting from Mudryk.
Yep. We're looking at Sesko. We have looked at other strikers. They haven't panned out. Sesko is not the perfect player. He's, to Clive's point, he might be the perfect clay to build the perfect player out of, but we don't know. But he's perfect clay. He's not perfect finished pottery. And I don't think everything's about Isak. I don't think the club is saying if it's not like Isak is the perfect player if he stays fit. I think it's clear our strategy isn't only Isak, only all the time. So we're in that in between. It isn't a barbell of we'll take anybody, a body will do it. Those players still cost real money. There's still that player you get to fill in still costs you, especially in the January window, 30, 40 million. And if we take it that money's real, that comes out of what you can spend in the summer. We know that. And now you're moving well away from perfect players in the summer. Now you got 40 million less for the player you're going after. Now you really are getting a body in the summer instead of what you wanted. So look, football's hard. Your money isn't infinite. You won't get only perfect players. It's going to be a mix of a couple of bodies, a couple of really good players, but not the perfect player, and one perfect player, or the best possible player available in that position in that summer. It's a spectrum, a continuum. We're doing it, and it's hard to measure because it's a thing over time. Your time windows, how do they pan out? You kind of got to look back 2-3 years at the transfer window 2-3 years ago. Very hard to assess what you have or haven't done in any one particular window at the time.
Yeah, and I would just add that, like, by and large, I think we've done a good job building the squad, but we better get this right, because I'm going to say this. The club's also a bit lucky. Now, it deserves credit. But to have Saka, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and Ethan Nwaneri here, that's a hell of a building block of players you didn't even have to buy. Yeah, you don't get that a lot. So Paul, Clive, I
And
just
I
want
think
to
we
finish.
got pretty lucky on Saliba and Gabriel, who we spent real money on, like you're 28 million or so, but like they're
But my point
70
is,
million, 80 million, 100 million players.
you get credit for operating in the market for those players, right? Whereas the academy players, again, not that you don't get credit for your academy, but that's a bit more of a crap. You can't plan on getting a Saka, Ethan, and Miles Lewis-Skelly all around the same time from the academy. Let me finish on this, Clive, because I'm just kind of curious to get your take on this. This comes from I Am All Right in the Discord. I know it's still early, but what would it take to classify Marino a good signing? Like, what metrics would you look at? This one is really hard for me because and especially with us linked to Zubamendi and the focus we've had on that club and their players. The Isak one would have been the right one. Odegaard, certainly a good one who sort of, quote, came from that club. But Marino, for me, has been a failed signing to this point. But it's still early. So what would it take?
I don't know what it'll take. I'm watching him. I'm looking at him to try to learn about him. It's hard to read, Elliot. It's hard to read, you know. Every time I think he hasn't done anything, and I look at all the data afterwards, and he's got a 7.5 on SofaScore. I'm thinking, how many touches, how many passes he complete? Oh my God, I didn't see any of those. You know what I mean? So I'm questioning if my glasses got the right prescription. So I think that's. So on that basis, I'm thinking, okay, mate, just let this one settle, can you? Let it settle. You know, there are exciting things happening with our younger players. There are more exciting players out there. Back to my original statement with him, he's a sensible bank manager. That's it. He gets the ball to his feet, he knocks it to the side, he gets into the box. He doesn't do anything that's going to make you excited. And then when we're sitting here with a dearth of forward options, everyone's thinking, who's the last bloke in? That bloke, the bank manager bloke. He's a bit steady. He's a bit steady, Eddie, in there. I'm not sure we needed that. You know what I mean? We need a forward. So he's suffering by comparison. But I'm holding my thoughts on that. There are other players that I like in a different, that I think we need in that position. And that wouldn't be top of my list, but I also appreciate what he's done. I was also in the ground when he played against Liverpool, against their midfield, and he started the game, scored, and did really well. Again, I didn't notice him till after the game, but we dominated the space. So I think I need to learn about him. I'm not there yet to be able to say, just because I don't know, I need to give him a kick. You know, it's obvious to me he's 1 yard off every now and again. And that can change with a proper piece of fitness, you know. So hopefully, again, another post-Dubai player you might see more of.
You would hope so. I would say that the manager is the best read on what to make of a signing of a player. And to this point, I think the manager hasn't used him as much as I would have expected. And the player recently did an interview where he said, now I'm bedded in, now I'm ready, now I'm fully integrated. So does the manager feel that way? Does he have the confidence? Will he get used more? We'll see. There's a lot of evolution still to happen here, but let's just hope part of the evolution is getting some injured players back pretty soon. We have Leicester away next. And, February is a pretty light month for fixtures. I think we play 3 times between now and the end of the month. There's an international break in March. So there's ways to navigate until players are back, but we obviously are not in a position where anything can be dropped. So we got to be careful. Like I said, there'll be just a thrilling, I think is the only word for it, Patreon piece of content tomorrow. And as soon as I think of what that is, I'll let you know. And then there'll be a main pod on Thursday. I think Paul's got something cooking for Wednesday. So another full week of stuff to get you through. Personally, a little frustrated. The club didn't invite all of us to Dubai, but we'll get through all of this together. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Paul, my friend, always good to see you.
Woohoo!
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere, Yankee Gunner, and some other places at ArsenalVision.com. I don't know. You know what to do. Anyway, we love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, listener.